In roughly 2000, 2001, I continually was reading about the HIV/AIDS pandemic in sub-Saharan Africa and reading stats like 6,000 people dying a day of HIV/AIDS, the kind of stats that just blow your mind. And I wanted to see this pandemic of sort of historic proportions in flesh and blood. I wanted to see it up close. And so I went to Africa, and I had a guide who kind of showed me around what this looks like. We went into villages where 27% of the people in the village are HIV positive. I saw things that just absolutely blew my mind. This kind of thing would not happen in America. And one of the places we went, Kigali, the capital of Rwanda, they brought together a group of women who are HIV positive and their young children who are HIV positive. And they told us their stories, what it's like to live with a disease that you can't even say by name because of the social stigma attached to it. And these stories were absolutely compelling and gut-wrenching and overwhelming. And it got to be the end of our time with these women. It was about lunchtime, and I hear through the wall what sounds like a drummer setting up. And then it sounds like a guitar player is tuning. And then as we're saying goodbye to these women, I hear people starting to sing. And by the time I'm walking out of the room, it sounds like a large number of people are singing and there's some sort of band playing. And so I leave the room and I go along the edge of the building, and at the end of the building, turn the corner, and there's this large room, and it's got like a roof and walls, but also some open spaces to the sky, and it's filled with these people who are singing and moving like it's the last groove on earth. It's absolutely compelling. And it wasn't like there was a song, then a space, then another song. It was like just one endless song. And it had all of these sort of melodies and harmonies kind of stacked on top of each other. It was absolutely captivating. And we had a cameraman with us. So I was like, dude, whatever you do, get this on film. And so this would have been about 7 years ago. We went back, and there's a bag in a storage room filled with just hours and hours of tapes, and found the footage from what we saw when we came around the corner. And it is hard to put in words, but it was this sort of, these people were caught up in something, a sort of unadulterated, pure ecstasy, a sort of moving with such freedom and liberation. It was like the joy you could just like reach up and grab it out of the air. I mean, watch this. And I'm watching these people in this sort of unrestrained celebration. And I'm wondering, what has happened here? What news did they just receive? Like, what is this that would arise within somebody, that would evoke out of somebody this kind of spontaneous joy and ecstasy and celebration? And so I found somebody who appeared to be a part of it, and I said to them, what is this? And the person says to me, they do this every day at lunch. You can own everything that you are supposed to own in the modern world, to be happy and satisfied and full of life, and yet at that very moment, in some profound way, be possessing next to nothing, while somebody else on the other side of the world, who's been through hunger and thirst and disease and genocide, is at that moment owning next to nothing and yet possessing everything. There is a difference between ownership and possession. You can own lots and lots of things and yet possess next to nothing. Well, it's also possible to own next to nothing and be possessing everything. This is why we have experiences where somebody we know is going through something difficult, and so we go to visit them in order to help them. And then we have this encounter with them where we leave realizing that we got way more out of the experience than they did. Why? Because in the midst of this person's suffering, the distinction between ownership and possession became quite clear. We go through something difficult, and somebody comes over to us and they say something like, "Oh man, I can't believe you're making it. It must be so tough." And we say to them with a straight face, because we actually believe it, we say, oddly enough, I have a sort of peace that surpasses understanding. I can't quite explain it. Well, the explanation is that there is a difference between ownership and possession. And sometimes we get seduced into thinking that life is found in ownership, but life is found in possession. And sometimes it takes suffering for us to learn the difference. There's a difference between ownership and possession. Having nothing and yet possessing everything. Tonight,